Impulsive marriage. A choice made in the heat of pain can change everything. September had always been a cruel month for Anna. It was in September that her father left home with another woman, leaving a suitcase at the door and a shattered mother. In September, her first love ended through a text message. And now, in September, she was in a wedding dress at the altar, watching the man she had loved for 7 years run into the arms of another woman. The church was crowded. The smiles that once illuminated the room were now confused and shocked expressions. Livia. Anna's voice trembled when she saw the woman in a red dress dramatically trip over the white carpet and clutch her chest. Matthias instantly let go of her hand, as if it were burning. "I need to help her," he said without even looking at Anna. Anna stood still as the groom ran to his childhood ex-girlfriend, picked her up in his arms, and hurriedly left the church. Whispers began. The elderly aunts made the sign of the cross, and the groomsmen avoided looking at her. It was then that Anna stepped forward. Her breath was rapid, her heart pounding in her chest. "Matthias." Her voice echoed through the hall. He paused for a second, his silhouette outlined by the sunlight coming through the church door. "If you leave now, it's over." Matthias hesitated for a moment but didn't turn around. He simply kept going. Anna felt her throat close. The humiliation burned like acid. He didn't fight, didn't think twice, didn't apologize. Nothing. That was it. 7 years thrown away. She looked around and saw dozens of faces waiting to see her reaction. She felt a wave of anger rise in her chest. She grabbed the microphone from the priest and took a deep breath. "The party is still on," she announced with a crooked smile, "but it's not a wedding anymore. Now, it's a breakup party. Let's celebrate my freedom." The guests were stunned. The musicians exchanged uncertain glances. But suddenly, someone clapped. Then another person, until the whole hall erupted in applause. If she was going to suffer, let it be with a glass of champagne in hand. Chapter 1: The night that changed everything. Anna danced, drank, laughed loudly. She threw herself onto the dance floor as if she wanted the whole world to see that she was fine. But deep down, an intense pain consumed her. With each toast, with each sip, the memory of Matthias with Livia in the hospital made her chest ache more. At some point in the early morning, her feet bare and makeup smudged, she decided she couldn't stand the hall any longer. She grabbed the car keys and drove aimlessly through the dark streets of the city. It didn't last long. The sudden pop of the flat tire made her scream. The car lost some stability, but she managed to pull over to the side of the road. She looked around. No familiar buildings, just a decaying gas station with flickering lights. She got out of the car, stumbling on her own feet. "Seriously, even you're going to betray me, Jaguar," she murmured to the vehicle. A man leaning against the gas station wall raised his eyes from his phone and watched her. He had his arms crossed and a cigarette between his fingers. His leather jacket was stained with grease, and his messy hair suggested he had spent the whole day working. "Problem?" he asked, his voice low and dragged. Anna stared at him, trying to focus her vision. "Flat tire." He exhaled smoke slowly. "Got a spare?" Anna furrowed her brow. Of course, she did. But she had no idea how to change a tire. "I can pay." He shrugged and stubbed out the cigarette on the sole of his boot. "I'll take care of it for you." He opened the trunk, grabbed the spare tire, and began changing the tire without saying anything. Anna watched him, feeling an unpleasant dizziness. "What's your name?" she asked. "Rafael. Are you a mechanic?" "Something like that." The silence reigned between them until he finished the job. "Done. It's fixed." Anna opened her purse and pulled out a wad of cash. She didn't even know how much she was giving him, but she didn't care. Rafael looked at the bills and frowned. "This is too much." "Then do me another favor." He raised an eyebrow. "What?" Anna laughed, feeling the alcohol make her too bold. "Marry me." He blinked, surprised. "What? 30,000. Right now. If you marry me." She was joking. Or not. The alcohol blurred her reasoning, but at that moment, it made sense. She wanted to forget Matthias. She wanted to throw it in his face that she didn't need him. Rafael remained silent for a long time. Then, he took the money and put it in his pocket. "There's a notary open at 8 in the morning." Anna widened her eyes. "Are you serious?" "You seem serious." She stared at him. He wasn't smiling, wasn't joking, he just watched her with those cold, analytical green eyes. Anna laughed loudly. Great. Then tomorrow morning, I'll marry a stranger. Little did she know, this decision would change her life forever. Chapter 2: A Marriage at Dawn. The night slowly wore on, but Anna kept drinking without a care. Sitting on the Jaguar's hood, swinging her bare feet, she held an almost empty whiskey bottle. The wedding dress, now wrinkled and dirty at the hem, seemed like a cruel reminder of the night that should have been the beginning of a new life but ended in humiliation. Rafael remained leaning against the car, watching her in silence. He didn't stop her from drinking, nor did he comment on her state. He simply waited. The sky began to lighten, painting the horizon in orange hues. The gas station clock flashed 7:50. Anna blinked a few times, trying to focus. Her thoughts were foggy, but still, she suddenly stood up, almost tripping on her own feet. Let's go. Rafael raised an eyebrow. Where to? She laughed, pointing at her dress. To the notary. You agreed, remember. He studied her for a few seconds, as if expecting her to back out or deny the absurd proposal from the night before. But Anna didn't back down. You still want to do this? He asked, crossing his arms. Anna took a step forward, her eyes slightly red from alcohol and unshed tears. I've never wanted anything more in my life. Rafael sighed, shaking his head. Then he grabbed the keys to his old car and unlocked the door. Get in, let's get this over with. Anna smiled crookedly and got in the car, unaware that this decision would change everything. Chapter 3: The Reality of Marriage. The sharp sound of the stamp echoed in the notary office. The clerk signed the papers without lifting his eyes, as if impulsive marriages were routine there. Anna, still dizzy from the alcohol and adrenaline, took the marriage certificate with a satisfied smile. Rafael, on the other hand, remained serious. He wasn't a man of big reactions, but something in his posture indicated that, to him, this was still a senseless madness. Now what, wife? He teased, shoving his hands in his pockets. What's the next step in your brilliant plan? Anna crossed her arms and glared at him arrogantly. Now we're going to a 5-star hotel, obviously. Rafael snorted through his nose. A short, almost mocking laugh. Wrong. We're going to my place. She blinked, surprised. Your place? Yeah. After all, we're married, right? You wanted a marriage, now you've got a husband. And a husband has a home. Anna opened her mouth to protest, but Rafael was already walking toward the car. He wanted her to give up. He wanted her to understand the weight of the decision she had made. She didn't give up. Chapter 4: The Shock of Reality. The car drove through streets Anna never imagined she would walk. She knew the upscale neighborhoods, wide avenues, and gated communities. But now, the city seemed to change. The streets became narrower, the buildings older and more worn. The smell of hot asphalt and fried food mixed in the air. When Rafael parked, Anna widened her eyes. This is where you live. The building was simple, with walls stained by time and some windows with clothes hanging to dry. There was no doorman, just a rusty iron gate that squeaked as it opened. Anna hesitated. For the first time, reality began to seep into her impulsive fantasy. What are you waiting for? Rafael asked, holding the door open. She took a deep breath and entered. The apartment was on the second floor. As soon as the door unlocked, Anna was greeted by a tiny space. One room, a living room that was also the kitchen, a small bathroom. There were few things: a mattress leaning against the wall, some scattered tools, a sink with dirty dishes, and a small TV perched on an old dresser. Welcome to our home, madam. Anna stayed silent. The realization was sinking in. Rafael observed her reaction. He expected her to run out, to say this was a mistake, that she wanted to go back to the life of luxury she had always known. But Anna said nothing. She walked to the mattress, pushed some clothes aside, and sat down. She took off her wedding shoes. Chapter 7: The Sermon in the Middle of the Night. The atmosphere in Rafael's simple apartment was heavy, and Anna felt the weight of the silence between them as she started to settle into the new space, hurriedly packing her suitcase as if she were trying to escape the unspoken words. But before she could lose herself in her thoughts again, Rafael, who had been silently observing everything, could no longer hold back. He stood up from the bed with an intensity Anna hadn't expected, his eyes fixed on her as if something inside him had snapped. "You can't just walk around alone at this time of night," he said, his voice firm and serious. "Don't you care about the risks? Don't you think about what could have happened?" Anna jumped. The last thing she expected at that moment was to be scolded. She looked at him, surprised by his reaction, but soon the surprise turned into a feeling she didn't know how to process. What Rafael was saying made sense, but she was so used to being unnoticed, to not being questioned, that hearing him like this made her feel vulnerable. And that bothered her. "I'm an adult, Rafael. I can do whatever I want," Anna retorted, feeling anger rise within her. She tried to hide the insecurity that dominated her, trying to be firm, but her words sounded more defensive than she wanted. "I was just trying to get away from that place." Rafael sighed, frustration taking over him. He didn't want to fight, but his concern for her was consuming him. He knew Anna was lost, but that didn't mean he wanted to see her self-sabotage. He took a step closer, his voice now softer, but still full of concern. "Anna, you can't go out on the street alone, especially not at night and in your condition." He looked at her, as if trying to understand what she thought she was doing. "I know you have problems, I know you're trying to deal with all this somehow, but you don't have to put yourself in danger. It's not just about you, it's about the people around you too. I care about you." Anna remained silent, what Rafael said resonating in her mind. She didn't know whether she should be angry or grateful that he cared. But the truth was, he was right. She knew that, but she was so submerged in the confusion of her feelings that she didn't want to admit it. It was easier to keep running from everything, including her own reality. "I didn't ask you to worry about me. I don't need anyone telling me what I can or can't do." Anna almost shouted, feeling the pressure building in her chest. She knew she was losing control, but she couldn't hold back the emotions that were overflowing from within. Rafael, seeing her reaction, remained silent for a moment. He knew she was at a very fragile point, that her words were charged with all the accumulated pain, all the suffering she hadn't yet faced. He didn't want to push her away, but he felt the need to make her understand that he was here for her, not to judge her, but to show her what really mattered. "I'm not telling you this to control you, Anna. But you need to start taking care of yourself. You're not alone anymore," he said, his voice softer now, frustration giving way to sincere concern. "You have a home now. Even if it's small, even if you haven't gotten used to it yet. But you have someone who cares about you, someone who wants to help you get out of this darkness. You might not realize it now, but you don't have to do this alone." Rafael's words pierced Anna like a sharp arrow. She looked at him, trying to read his face, trying to understand the sincerity in his eyes. He was really worried, not because he wanted to control her, but because somehow, he believed she could still find herself, that she could still escape that spiral of self-destruction. She felt a mixture of anger and gratitude, but deep down, she knew his words came from a place of genuine concern. Something she hadn't received from anyone in a long time. Anna sighed, exhausted. She knew he was right. But she also knew it wouldn't be easy. She didn't know how to deal with everything that was happening inside her, but maybe, just maybe, Rafael could be the anchor she so desperately needed, even though she didn't want to admit it right now. "I'm not used to depending on anyone, Rafael," she said softly, with a vulnerability she rarely let show. "But I know that, I need to try." Rafael looked at her, and finally, the anger gave way to a softer expression. He moved closer, gently touching her shoulder, as if to tell her everything would be okay, even if she didn't believe it in that moment. "It's okay, Anna. We'll take it one step at a time." Anna nodded, but there was still a weight in her chest. She didn't know what the future held, or how she would feel when she woke up the next day, but something inside her finally gave way. She was willing to try, at least. She wasn't alone, and for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. Chapter 8: The Repentance That Doesn't Come. Mateus was tired. 2 days at the hospital with Livia, trying to take care of her while she went through a critical phase of her health, had drained him. The pressure was building on his shoulders, but he still couldn't understand what had happened with Anna. How could she have made such a scene? How could she have turned that moment, which should have been full of happiness, into something so bitter. He tried calling her countless times, each tap on the phone screen a reminder of the failure he felt he was. Nothing. No answer. After the third day without news, Matthias had no choice but to go to Anna's apartment. He needed to clarify everything once and for all. If she was just throwing a tantrum, if it was just another one of her dramatic crises that she always created when things didn't go her way, he needed to deal with it. When he arrived at the building, his eyes fell on the rented sign on Anna's door. A cold feeling ran down his spine, and he stopped for a moment, processing what he saw. She didn't do this, he thought, unable to believe what he was seeing. She can't have left like this, without giving me any explanation. That was when the anger started to rise. He took a deep breath and, with long strides, went to the door. He knocked loudly, hoping that Anna would be there to give him an explanation, to say that it had all been a bad joke. But the door stayed closed. The silence was a sharp knife, cutting into his expectations as he tried to understand what was happening. She can't be doing this, not now. Not after everything we've been through. Matthias thought, irritated by the idea that she was just throwing a tantrum. After all, what else could it be? She hadn't given him a chance to explain himself, and now she was ignoring him. Inside, the pain he was feeling was transforming into something darker. Guilt. He was starting to feel guilty. Even though he didn't fully understand what he had done wrong, a part of him knew he was distancing himself from Anna, and that was eating him up inside. Chapter 9: The Critical Look of Family. As Matthias recovered from the shock of seeing Anna's apartment rented out to someone else, he was quickly engulfed by the criticism of his own family. The pressure was mounting. He tried to justify himself, but no one seemed to understand. Matthias, do you really think she's going to forgive you after this? His aunt asked, with an accusing look. How could you choose Livia over her? Do you think this will work? You're going to regret it, I'm sure. The words of the people closest to him pounded in his head. And he couldn't focus on anything anymore. He knew he was doing his best to help Livia, but he couldn't shake the thought that maybe he was doing it for the wrong reasons. Matthias isolated himself even more. The thought of seeing Anna happy with someone else ate him up inside. What had he done? What exactly had happened between them, with him choosing Livia at a crucial moment in Anna's life? He could no longer ignore it. He could no longer pretend everything was fine when the people around him were beginning to question him so strongly. Matthias knew he couldn't go back, but now he was starting to see the consequences of his choices. Chapter 10: The Awareness of Loss. The night after the frustrating visit to Anna's apartment, Matthias couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling for hours, lost in his own thoughts. What was he going to do now? How could he fix something so destructive? He had never imagined it would be like this. Not with Anna, not with her. As the hours dragged on, his longing for Anna became unbearable. He couldn't just sit still. He knew he needed to move, but how could he rebuild after causing so much pain? How could he fight for something that seemed to have been destroyed by his own hands? Anna's thoughts filled his mind relentlessly. He still remembered how she had looked at him, that gaze full of frustration and sadness when he left her alone at the church. She loved me. She really loved me, he thought, as if that were some kind of comfort. But what had he done to her love? What had he done when he chose to put his ex-girlfriend ahead of everything and everyone? Matthias knew the pressure was mounting, but he also knew that he had lost the chance to turn things around. All he could. Chapter 17: Playfulness and Limits. Rafael entered the apartment and immediately noticed the difference. The scent of soap and cleanliness hung in the air, and the mess that had once been part of the setting had vanished. The floor gleamed, the windows were open, letting in the cool breeze. His eyes landed on the table set with a simple, yet inviting lunch. For a moment, he stood still, feeling something unusual within himself. Gratitude. For the first time in his life, someone was returning his gesture without him needing to ask. He ran a hand through his hair, letting out a light sigh. It was a strange feeling. He had always taken care of everything on his own, but now Anna was here. And somehow, she was bringing life into this forgotten space. Rafael looked around, searching for her. The sound of water from the bathroom gave him the answer. The bathroom, of course, didn't have a door, only a thin curtain serving as a divider. He had grown used to living that way, but now that there was a woman in the house, he realized he would need to change that. He went to the bathroom entrance and, with a mischievous smile, said playfully, "My wife, may I take a shower with you?" There was a brief silence before Anna's response, which was as provocative as his question. "Of course, darling. Come in." Rafael's eyes widened, and he felt his face heat up. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He hadn't expected her to play along so easily. The heat rose to his neck, and, in reflex, he turned quickly, heading straight for the living room. "You weren't supposed to accept," he muttered to himself, sitting on the couch and hiding his face in his hands. In the bathroom, Anna laughed to herself, satisfied with the effect she had on him. Chapter 18 Plans for the Future. Anna came out of the bathroom with her hair still dripping, wrapped in a towel as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Rafael quickly averted his gaze, trying to focus on the food on his plate, but it was impossible to ignore her presence. She approached the table, took a piece of bread, and chewed slowly while looking at him. Rafael, in turn, raised an eyebrow and commented, "You know, you could take the clothes to the bathroom, right?" Anna shrugged. "And why? Do you have someone visiting you unexpectedly?" "Because this towel is thicker than the bathroom curtain." Rafael let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "I touched the wrong subject, didn't I?" She gave him a sideways smile and sat at the table, grabbing a fork and trying the food she had prepared. "Speaking of wrong things, when are we moving?" Anna asked, looking at him. Rafael rested his elbows on the table and thought for a moment. "I was thinking tomorrow." She nodded. "Great. Is this apartment yours or rented?" "It's mine." Anna smiled with satisfaction. "Great. So, while we move to the other one, how about a renovation here?" Rafael looked at her, surprised by the suggestion. "You want to renovate this place?" "Of course. Just as I need changes, this apartment needs them too. You may not notice, but this place is depressing." Rafael laughed, crossing his arms. "Good to know you have long-term plans for the two of us." Anna shrugged, a playful glint in her eyes. "Let's see where this goes, right?" Rafael sighed and looked at Anna, who was still wrapped in a towel, talking about renovations as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He shook his head, laughing lightly. "Anna, you're strange." She raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "Strange why? You married me on impulse, rented a bigger apartment without even asking if I wanted to move, and now you want to renovate this place as if it were a life project." Anna shrugged. And that's not normal." She let out a light laugh and rested her elbow on the table, staring at him challengingly. "And when have I ever been normal, Rafael? If I wanted normality, I wouldn't have accepted the 30,000 to marry you." He couldn't help but laugh. She was right. From the beginning, nothing about this relationship had been normal. But somehow, it made him feel alive. Rafael crossed his arms, looking at Anna with a teasing smile. "I really am a married man. I come home, and a beauty is waiting for me in a towel, ready to make a baby to complete the family." Anna's eyes widened for a second before she burst out laughing. "You really can't get over that chicken talk, huh?" Rafael shrugged, keeping a serious expression. "I'm just stating the facts. You mentioned kids, and now you're walking around the house in a towel. Soon, you'll want to choose names." Anna leaned slightly over the table, smiling playfully. "You know we're husband and wife, but we don't have intimacy yet." He raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. "Now, if the towel is bothering you that much, I can take it off." Rafael immediately choked on his own air. He coughed a few times, trying to regain his composure, while Anna laughed at. Scene. A conversation about finances and a surprising confession. Rafael was sitting on the couch, fidgeting with his hands, clearly troubled by a worry that had been lingering for some time. He looked at Anna, who was sitting beside him, and felt it was time to talk about something important. He didn't want her to feel overwhelmed, especially regarding the household finances. So, with a sigh, he turned to her and began to speak. "Anna, I think we need to talk about finances," Rafael started, his voice heavy with seriousness. "I'll find a better job, one that pays more, because I want to cover all the expenses." I don't want you to have to worry about any of that. He wanted Anna to feel secure, not burdened by the idea of being the main breadwinner in the house. He was determined to do everything he could to prove that he could take care of both of them. Anna, however, didn't seem as concerned about the finances as he had imagined. She turned her head to him, her gaze calm, almost relaxed. She smiled slightly before replying with a confidence he wasn't expecting. Rafael, I'm a jewelry designer. So, I make really good money. You don't need to worry about the finances. I can handle it, she said with a calm smile, as if it were the simplest thing. Rafael looked at her for a moment, surprised. He knew Anna was independent and that her career supported her well, but he hadn't imagined she'd be so comfortable with it. Still, he didn't want the financial burden to fall on her. But seeing how calm she seemed, he felt more at ease. However, there was something that bothered him. Something he couldn't get out of his mind. He thought about how his life seemed so different now, especially at work. He was covered in grease almost all the time, and he wondered if that might be something unpleasant for Anna. As a jewelry designer, her work was refined, sophisticated. He feared that his reality as a mechanic might be too much of a contrast. Rafael looked at her, a bit embarrassed, and asked, Anna, don't you find it disgusting seeing me covered in grease all the time? I know you work with beautiful things, and well, you know how it is. I'm a mechanic. Anna, upon hearing him, let out a soft laugh. She looked at him in a completely different way, her eyes sparkling with something more than just sympathy. She didn't seem bothered, in fact, she seemed to admire him more than he had imagined. She leaned closer to him, smiling mysteriously. No, Rafael, I don't find it disgusting, actually, I think the opposite. I think it's the sexiest thing seeing you covered in grease. It's like you have this rugged, strong side, you know. I like that, she spoke with a confidence and sincerity that left him surprised. Rafael was silent for a moment, processing what she had just said. He'd always thought a dirty and tough job might be a turn-off for women. But hearing it from Anna, so openly and honestly, took him by surprise. You think it's sexy? He asked, incredulously. He'd never imagined that something he saw as part of his job could be viewed in such a positive way. But of course, this was Anna. She always had the ability to turn things in her favor, in a way he never expected. Anna let out a chuckle, gently touching Rafael's arm. Yes, I do. I like how dedicated you are to what you do, and, to tell you the truth, I think there's something incredibly attractive about a man who's not afraid to get dirty to work. Rafael didn't know what to say, but the way she spoke, with so much affection and sincerity, made him feel comfortable in his own skin, despite the grease and dirt. He smiled at her, feeling a wave of gratitude for having someone by his side who accepted him exactly as he was, without judgment. You're amazing, you know, he said, with a genuine smile. Anna simply smiled back, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I know, she teased, before giving him a soft kiss on the cheek. The conversation about finances might have been important, but at that moment, Rafael realized that what truly mattered was Anna's unconditional support. She accepted him, understood him, and found him attractive even in his imperfections. And that, to him, was worth more than any amount of money or status. Scene: the confrontation at the restaurant. Mateus was sitting in the living room, fiddling with his phone, not paying much attention to what was happening around him. In his mind, he was distant, wandering through his thoughts about Anna and life with Livia. Until, suddenly, the phone vibrated. When he looked at the screen, he saw that it was a call from his parents. He hesitated, but couldn't ignore it. He answered, and his mother's voice immediately came through, bringing a strange feeling to his chest. I told you, Mateus. I told you Anna would give up on you. She's already found someone else. Mateus, still in disbelief, thought it was just another joke. But then, the message arrived. The screenshots from Anna's social media. She was at her favorite restaurant, smiling, with a man beside her. They were both wearing rings. Mateus felt a wave of cold run down his spine. His heart seemed to freeze. The pain was immense, but he forced himself to react. He hung up the phone and, without thinking twice, stood up and headed to the restaurant. His mind was a mess, his emotions conflicting. He had always promised Anna that he would take her there again, but never found the time. Now, it seemed like fate was throwing it all in his face at once. When he arrived at the restaurant, his eyes immediately fixed on the scene before him. Anna was sitting at a table with a man who was clearly not him. They were talking animatedly, laughing, and it seemed like the world around them didn't matter. Matthias could no longer hold back the weight of frustration, pain, and anger. He quickly approached the table, his eyes fixed on Anna, and interrupted the conversation. "Anna," he shouted, his voice carrying a mix of anger and hurt, "what's going on here? I've been blocked. You didn't answer me, and now you show up here with another guy." Anna looked up, her face serene, but her eyes revealed a sadness that Matthias couldn't understand. She stared at him for a moment, then calmly spoke. "I warned you, Matthias. I warned you that if you walked away that day, our engagement was over." Anna's words echoed in Matthias's mind, cutting deeper than he could have imagined. His frustration only grew, and he couldn't accept that this was really happening. His chest tightened, and he wanted to say something more, but anger blinded him. At that moment, the man who was with Anna stood up from his chair. Rafael stepped in front of Anna, like a shield, his body firm and protective. Matthias looked at him, perplexed, not understanding what was happening. "Who are you?" Matthias asked, his tone aggressive and uncontrolled. Rafael wasn't intimidated. He looked at Matthias with impressive calmness, and his words were firm. "I'm Anna's husband." Matthias was silent for a few seconds, processing the words. The impact was immediate. What he was hearing seemed absurd, but the expression on Anna's face, her calm and even slightly sad look, made him start to understand. She wasn't there for him anymore. What he had taken for granted, Anna's love, was gone. And in its place was this man, who now occupied the space Matthias thought still belonged to him. "Husband," Matthias repeated, almost as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He looked at Anna, trying to find some sign that this was a mistake, but she just stared at him with the same calm, with a look that no longer belonged to him. You married him. After everything that happened, after you left me." Anna, without losing her composure, looked at him one last time, her voice soft but firm. "Yes, Matthias, I married him, because he was the only one who showed me what it means to be respected, what it means to have true love, without lies and without games." Anna's words cut like a knife. Matthias stood there, frozen, unable to react, feeling the weight of everything he had lost. The dream he had with her, the future he believed he would have, was shattered. Rafael placed his hand on Anna's shoulder, as a gesture of support and protection. He didn't look at Matthias, but stood there, firm, showing that this wasn't just a story of revenge or impulse. It was something Anna chose. And she was happy with her choice. Matthias took a step back, his eyes still fixed on Anna, trying to find some explanation, some justification. But none came. The woman he loved was there, with another man, and he didn't know how to react. Everything he had tried and lost crystallized in that moment. He no longer had a place in her life. Without saying another word, Matthias turned and left the restaurant, feeling the weight of his defeat and the emptiness now filling the space where his heart used to be. Scene: a night of confessions. The night was warm, and the bottles of wine were piling up on the table. The soft sound of music in the background mixed with the low laughter of Anna and Rafael. They had gone out to try to process everything that had happened at the restaurant, and despite the tension that still lingered in the air, something lighter seemed to have taken over the moment. The drink had loosened them up, making them more open to each other. Anna, with her glass nearly empty. Time passed, and things between Anna and Rafael, though still shrouded in uncertainty, began to stabilize. Rafael, with his own fears and insecurities, found a way to overcome the doubts that haunted him. Anna, with her serene confidence and constant presence, became an anchor for him. She, in turn, had already moved past the past with Matthias, and now looked to the future with fresh eyes. What started as an impulsive marriage, a way out of life's expectations, had turned into something deeper, more real. Something both were willing to live. Determined to make the relationship work, Rafael decided to take the next step. He knew that the 30,000 they had received as a wedding gift were not a solution to future problems but an opportunity. And he wanted to invest in this moment, in this relationship, to ensure their future would be stable and full of possibilities. On a sunny afternoon, after a day of work, he called Anna to talk. They were in the small apartment that now felt more like home than ever. The new bed, the freshly painted walls, the new curtains, everything seemed more aligned with the life they were building together. When Anna entered the room, Rafael looked at her seriously, but also with the familiarity that had grown between them in recent months. "Anna," he began, with a calm that didn't hide his determination. "I put the 30,000 in a joint account. I wanted it to be ours, something we built together. It's not just about money, but about trust. I don't want any more secrets between us. This is my commitment to you." Anna looked at him, surprised. She hadn't expected this initiative from Rafael, but the gesture touched her deeply. He was putting everything, including their future, into a shared account, dividing the burdens and responsibilities. It was a clear sign that he was committed to what he was building with her. "I knew you were listening to me, I knew you were ready to take this step, Rafael," Anna said with a soft smile. She moved closer and held his hand. "I'm here, too, with you. It hasn't been easy, but now I know we can build something together. Something real." Rafael smiled, feeling the weight of the responsibility, and at the same time, a sense of relief. The feeling that, finally, he had found his way, and that path led through her. He pulled her into a tight hug, feeling the connection between them grow even stronger. Meanwhile, Mateus, over the months, tried to find peace. He didn't want to stay with Livia, as he knew deep down that his heart still belonged to Anna. However, he didn't dare to seek her out again. The emptiness of not being with her was something he still tried to fill, but couldn't. He began to understand that, though he had lost Anna, life would go on, and he needed to move forward. He reconnected with his own dreams and goals, seeking new possibilities in life, without wanting to force something that was already lost. The true turning point came on an autumn afternoon. Mateus, after some time away, showed up at the restaurant where he and Anna used to go. Without expectations, without regrets. He was determined to find his peace. To his surprise, Anna was there, with Rafael by her side. They were smiling, discussing future plans, like a happy couple. Rafael, seeing Mateus standing by the door, gave a slight smile. He knew that Anna's past could never be erased, but now it was their present that mattered. Anna looked at Mateus, and for a moment, their eyes met. There was no resentment or pain, just a silent understanding that each person's path had led them here. She smiled softly and gestured with her hand, as if saying, "It's okay." Mateus, now more mature, calmer, took a step back. He knew that, although the pain of losing Anna still existed, he needed to move forward. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay," he said, with a sad smile. Anna, with a gentle and firm look, replied, "I'm okay, Mateus. And I hope you are, too." Rafael placed his hand in Anna's, and she squeezed it, feeling the warmth and commitment that had grown between them. They were ready to move forward, together. The past no longer defined them. They had learned from it, but now they were ready to build a future without the mistakes and wounds of before. At the end of that day, Anna and Rafael went home, hand in hand, ready to face the future they were creating together. And even though the world outside was unpredictable, they knew that with the love, trust, and partnership they had cultivated, they could face any challenge. The marriage that had started as an impulse was now a true union, solid and full of possibilities. The end.